With a quorum present, I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:35 p.m. This is a regular meeting and our first meeting since the district meeting in March, so it's a regular meeting for the month of April. The agenda was posted in advance as necessary. I'd like to introduce myself, Darlene Mann. I'm the members of the committee who are present this evening, who include Raoul Blanchet, Brian Rader, Tom Enright. Welcome Melanie LeBake. Welcome back, Tony Stinesi. Tom Solon is expected. Dave Blinn has an excused absence for this evening, and I'd like to welcome our District BA, Kelly Seeley. If you could all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Underway with our agenda for this evening. I'll ask at this point if there are any agenda adjustments. Typically don't have any.
Could I at some point take 2 or 3 minutes to open a discussion about the labor contracts?
Yes. So
and 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're done.
And I think we can get to that in our district meeting review and budget planning discussion.
Oh, okay.
So
fine.
I think we'll get to that. And if not, we'll make sure we do.
Thank you.
I'll appoint Raoul as the meeting observer for this evening, and as this is our first meeting since the March meeting and the elections have occurred, it's our reorg meeting. So what we typically do is vote on officers for the upcoming year. And that includes the chair and vice chair positions. In the past, we have done secretary, but we kind of tended to let that go. And any type of secretary responsibilities, like during non-public sessions, which we very infrequently have, but any type of those responsibilities we would take up on a volunteer basis, if someone can, jump in and take those notes, or the chair or vice chair would do it. So we'll leave that one, if everyone is in agreement, we'll leave that as not appointing not voting on anyone for that position. And at this time, I'll look for nominations for the chair.
Darlene Mann?
Second.
Okay. I'll take the motion from Tom Enright and seconded from Raoul. I'll entertain any others at this point. Seeing none, we can move forward to the vote unless anyone would like to provide any comments. And that's okay if you don't.
I enjoy very much that you're the...
That wasn't, begging for more commentary.
She's good, man.
You do a great job consistently over many years. Mm-hmm. You know your stuff. You know you're very knowledgeable with this process, the details, the topics. I couldn't think of anybody better to lead us.
Well, your words are very kind. Mm-hmm. Okay, at this point, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, Darlene as myself for the chair. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll abstain, so it's 5-0-1. Thank you. I appreciate the nomination, the repeat nomination. And move to the nomination for vice chair.
Nominate Raoul Blanchet.
I'll second.
Seconded by Brian. Great. Same thing. Any comments, additional nominations?
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just out here.
So I'd like to thank Raoul for the years he's been vice chair. I don't really know how long it's been, but you do an outstanding job. So maybe one of these days I'll come late to a meeting and let you get things underway.
We certainly need to practice the process of running through a meeting so that I can survive.
Okay, Tony's just getting all set with his online access, hopefully.
I'll get you on. Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. So at this point, I'll call the vote. All those in favor is Raoul as vice chair for the budget committee. It's 5-0-1. Raoul abstains. Great, thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. We did have several sets that were outstanding, just kind of given the nature of how we meet in that January, February, March timeframe. We have the minutes from January 23rd outstanding. There were some very minor adjustments, you know, inserting commas, you know, apostrophes and things like that. Nothing was really a material change to the minutes as they were distributed. So at this point, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as of
Question.
January 23rd. Yep.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
On the minutes, it shows that members absent, Blinn, LeVake, and Denise. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yes, and that was January 23rd. I'm wondering, can we say something like abstain or
Yes.
to indicate that we weren't there at that time?
Yes, yes.
So can you change that from absent to?
Yes, to not, yes, not
Yeah.
present at that meeting because you weren't in the seat. Mm-hmm.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Can I make a point? I usually, when Dawn sends out the draft minutes, I try to read them as soon as possible and go through carefully, beginning to end. And it does two things for me. Number one, it refreshes my memory as to what we discussed. But number two is, we give her some lead time because, you know, some of these meetings take a long time to prepare. So I encourage you all to quickly, say within a few days at the latest, try to provide all the comments to her. That way, when she actually, if there were to be making adjustments or, you know, and she sends it back to us, it's easy for us to then, having reviewed it, that it's easy to approve them. But it's a good practice, at least for
Yeah.
me.
That makes sense. It's my first meeting, so
Yeah.
forgive me.
So
It's
I'll
all
take,
right.
take a motion to approve the minutes of January 23rd
As amended or,
as amended.
yes, I make a
From
motion
Raul,
to.
seconded by
I'll second.
Brian. All those in favor, as Melanie, what we were just discussing, Dave Blinn was officially absent from that meeting. Tony and Melanie were not, members of the, committee at that time. So, all those in favor of the January 23rd minutes as amended? Okay, great, 700, thank you. For the public hearing minutes of February 3rd, I'll take a motion to approve. Now, we have different sets for that evening because there were several things going on. So the first set of minutes will be the public hearing minutes for the FY26 budget from February 3rd.
Okay.
Motion by Raul, seconded by Tom Enright. Questions, comments?
Was I there for that one?
You were participating
Zoom?
electronically,
Yeah.
yes.
And can I abstain?
Sure, yes, you absolutely can.
And Tony needs to abstain too, because he wasn't a member
Well,
at
the
the
way,
time.
technically, the
How's that
way minute approval works is that if you've read and reviewed the minutes and, you know, or can support the content, you can still vote on them even if you were
Okay.
not present at the
Okay.
meeting. But it's really kind of individual
Okay,
preference of whether you know, would abstain if you weren't present or whatnot. But if you feel that you've read them, reviewed them, and you have a,
but if the elections took place in March, he wasn't really a member, right?
no, but he
we're
could, but they've,
approving them today.
yeah, but you're
Yeah.
approving them today
Okay.
when they are members, and they can review them for
yeah.
content and things
Okay.
like that, so.
So I'll remove my abstain. I reviewed it and read it. So
Okay,
I approve.
okay, great. So, all those in favor of the public hearing minutes from the 3rd? Great, a unanimous vote. Moving on to the joint meeting minutes from February 3rd. There was some discussion about, you know, this is the one where we took all the votes and took our positions as a board. And again, Brian was electronic, and same stanza, Tony and Melanie were not members at the time. So there was, again, a minor, I guess we would say, a motion to approve the minutes as amended because there was a replacement of "and" with "a," so it's technically an amendment. So I'll take a motion to bring those
I'll
to
make
the
a
floor from Raul, seconded by
I'll second.
Brian. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Great, 7-0. And then the third set of minutes was for the second public hearing, which was on the petition articles. So, we held a second hearing to distinguish them from the original content of the warrant itself, and, the petition articles had, I think I think there needed to be another, did we need a second public hearing on those?
I think for one of them, it had to be.
It had to be in Brookline, but we were able to hold the one in Hollis,
Yeah.
that evening, so, we'll bring I'll accept a motion to bring the public hearing on the petition warrant articles minutes to the floor from February third.
I make a motion.
From Raul, seconded by
I'll
Brian.
second.
Great. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? 7-0. Great. I'd also like to note, just for the minutes, that the votes have gone to 7 because Tom Solon arrived at 6:41. Welcome, Tom. Seeing no public input this evening, we'll move on to the general content of our meeting tonight. So we're starting the meeting. I'm going to make my own agenda adjustment and just welcome Melanie and Tony to the meeting and just run through some of the logistics we have for the committee, which is that we do meet on the fourth Thursday of the month here at the library. We do try to keep the meetings to a 6:30 to 8:30 window, and that occasionally changes during budget season if we need a lengthier discussion on collective bargaining agreements or topics that include the budget. Running through our kind of plan for the year, we do meet monthly, but we do take off for the month of July. So there will not be a meeting in July, and then our first meeting after June will be, it's almost like having the whole summer off, but we do have a meeting the fourth week of August. So we do kind of get up and running right around the time the school year starts. The time we deviate from that fourth Thursday of the month is for Thanksgiving and Christmas, because those holidays have been kind of typically fall right around that fourth Thursday window. And right now, we've tentatively think we would go to the third Thursday, but we do just talk amongst ourselves as a committee to see if that really is a good timeline for everybody. We've done the third Thursday, we've done the Monday before the Thursday, and that's something we can decide as a committee as the year goes on. We don't meet at the end of February because we've met earlier in the month to do the public hearing. We don't meet in March because we've had the district meeting and a whole slew of meetings across the two towns. Give each other a break a little bit and get rolling again in April. Our fixed agenda topics include a food service overview in May and a facilities overview in June. We can flip-flop those, Kelly, as staff is available.
I think they're good in that order.
But we'll go in that order with
Yeah.
food service and then facilities. And then as we proceed at the end of the summer, we typically speak with the auditors and review the prior budget. The district does, well, the whole SAU does its audit on the 4 entities over the summer, but the audit we're reviewing is the prior one because they're still doing audit work and side calculations and exhibits and things like that that aren't immediately available in August, but they will. The auditor does come to our meeting and reviews the audit with us. And then we roll into September with, kind of all results every month, but a preliminary discussion of budget items or assumptions we know are changing with an upcoming budget, preliminary guidance in October, reviews in November and December, so that we're really working toward finalizing a budget in the January timeframe, obviously before the public hearing. So that's kind of how our year shapes up. And I do like to take this meeting to talk about, kind of reset ourselves, remember what actually did get voted in at the district meeting, and talk about what we think went particularly well or poorly, things we can improve on, and then to Tom's point, and as we move toward thinking about FY26 budget, if there's a topic or topics that we would like to tackle as a budget committee. As we go through the budget process, we've had special education overviews and things like that. Tom had spoken to me earlier about spending some focused time with collective bargaining, so we'll talk about that in a little while. But I would just like to, we'll have an overview of, where we ended up with the budget through this year's meeting. This one. And if you recall, I don't know that this has ever happened in history. We did have two bond articles that were approved at the district meeting. So the one was for the middle school energy efficiency improvements, and the second one was for installation of solar. So those projects will get underway. We've approved the operating budget. It had a reduction, so let me go down and see where our operating budget. Article 3, there we are. Our operating budget was $30,245,427, and
That's
we.
because the bond passed.
Right,
Yeah.
and because, right, we had some additional money in the operating budget in the event the energy efficiency bond did not pass. Since it did, we amended the budget down and passed a slightly lower budget than was originally stated on the warrant. We passed the HESA contract, the SAU budget, that did not have any, headcount changes. It's, continuing with staff. The $300,000 for the maintenance trust and the $125,000 in contingency. For the petition warrant articles, in whatever combination they were passed over, not voted on, they did not pass or were passed over, and no votes took place. So we're not obligated to include tax impact on the warrant. I believe, were they all passed over? Anyone? They were all
Yes.
passed
Yes.
over. Okay,
Yes.
so those were to adopt SB2, adopt a budget cap, and adopt a tax cap. I wish I could talk a little bit better this evening. I seem to be stumbling over my words.
You're doing good.
I would like to just add, we do focus, try to track legislation as the year unfolds. The reason why I'm bringing up legislation right now is because of the last two of the warrant articles were addressing budget or tax caps, and there was specific legislation that would have required school districts to operate under a tax cap. That legislation was removed prior to crossover, prior to the House bill crossing over to the Senate. It was attached, the language that would have required school districts to implement a tax cap was amended onto House Bill 675, which was addressing increasing the pool for the statewide education property tax and so on and so forth. It was a late amendment. It bypassed many of the, processes in typical way LSRs are brought forward and made into bills. But at crossover, it was removed. It was then attached, as 675 was attached to the House Bill 2, which was the overall funding, the bill that funds the entire
Budget.
the state budget, and it was amended out and did not cross over to the Senate. So that was, I think, a relief to many, many districts, because it would have obligated every district in the state to operate under a tax cap. So hopefully it doesn't come back with the Senate, but that's where we stand right now.
That's the one that recommended that there be a tax cap of $27,000 per,
No.
There
per
was
student.
one.
No,
that-
no, it wasn't that specific. The way the language on House Bill 675 was amended, it tied the potential cap to CPI, because
Yeah.
it was for everybody, but it
But
didn't.
when it was presented in Hollis, it was the 27,000, but
That
then
was the budget
a
cap.
version of that was what you're talking about at the House level.
Yeah, so, right,
Which
so
we-
the one at the state level did not specify a
No.
dollar
Right,
amount
right.
as a cost per student. It was CPI based.
The one in Hollis at the meeting was $27,000, and the tax cap was to be around $27,000, which means that it would have been a $7,000 more roughly than what the cost per student currently is, around $20,000.
Right, but the
So-
cost per student at we can have a whole conversation about how the cost per student is calculated at the state level and how it does not align to a budget amount per student, which is a real conversation for a whole other day. But it,
The net effect is
passing
we
it-
don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
right, yes. So
It's not gonna
This
disappear.
year.
this year we won't have to. So I did want to share that information. We can talk about legislation another time, but I wanted to share that because that, for me personally, was just a huge relief that we didn't, after managing it at our own district level, that we didn't have it implemented at a state level.
Not to digress, but sometimes I bring a point because I think the conversation we end up having 1 or 2 minutes in length is instructive for people who may be listening or watching on TV. It's educational.
If it's educational, no one will watch it.
Wait.
So I think, personally, I know after reviewing the minutes of the school board meeting, I know that Drew Mason attended the school board's meeting, and I would just, to address, some of the changes and ask for input on how the process went. I didn't invite Drew this evening, but I will just say that I feel like the process improvements that we discussed jointly, I really do think, I think, every meeting has its, positives and negatives and things like that, but I believe we accomplished a lot. We, as I said, got those 2 bonds passed, and I really do think we had one of the shorter meetings on record, even though it felt kind of lengthy by the time we got to things, and there were lots of ballot votes and things like that. It really was one of the meetings that we finished in a more timely fashion, and I think we accomplished a lot of good things. So hopefully we move forward in kind of the same vein. That would be my hope going forward. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts or comments.
I agree 100%. Just
Yeah.
a side note, I know that civics classes were given a task to observe, be at the meeting, and write about it. And it was interesting because they saw what we saw, and they saw things that, why is this happening? Why is time being wasted in certain areas? So, out of the mouths of babes, there was some very,
I will say, my son is a junior. He has civics this second half of the year. He spent a lot of time reading the town report. There were several assignments, several quizzes, and they really did, take the students through not only like if you attended and addressed some things, but just actual, the information contained in the actual town report, which I thought was kind of great to have the kids.
Would it be appropriate to invite the civics teacher to maybe come in and give us a sense of the results of what the outcomes of what it was found? What was the
yeah, I don't know at this late time of the year what they're studying and taking exams and things like that. But what I would be interesting on the same note is at the town meeting, have some seniors come in and talk about what they've been doing. Because I think lots of times they get a bad rap because people look at some of the statistics out there, which is not, they use that to really, I think, insult students. Because there's so many good students that are working so hard, that are doing so well, that I would say they're amongst the best and brightest in any school, anytime, any place. And it's diminishing to the student to have to listen to that. So having students come in and explain to the people, this is the class, this is what we're doing. And I think they would be very impressed with what they see.
I didn't understand that. You think seniors don't understand
No, I think the town doesn't understand because they get painted with the very broad brush that says,
No, he thought you meant
30%.
senior citizens, and you meant high school seniors.
high school seniors. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm one of those seniors too.
since I'm a senior citizen, immediately.
No. I'm talking about the students.
High school
To get up
seniors.
and talk about what they're doing, what they're about. Because when you look at statistics like 34% of the students
Below
are below in math. Well, that's okay if you're measuring, from 5 years ago without taking into consideration what's changed. You should be looking at how do we stand as a school in the country, in the state, and then you get a different perspective. Because what I would say is about 65% of them are performing well against math. And if you look at
Got it.
Hollis High School, Hollis Brookline Cooperative, in the country, out of 25,000 schools, high schools in the country, we're ranked 1,625 or 1,650. That puts us at around the top 6-7% in the country. And people are not seeing that. They just see these numbers because they want to look at something negative, to say something negative, to complain about
Yeah.
the costs. It always gets down to the cost. So,
Students,
long-winded, but I think people would be very impressed with students getting up and talking, I'm a senior and I'm doing this, and, whatever they want to say.
the students have to be voting age, don't they? To be able to speak.
To be
for
able to
anyone.
speak,
To be
yeah,
able to
to go
speak.
to the microphone.
Except if, let's say, as a BudCom committee, we ask them to present to the town what they're about. And I don't know if that means that they have to be voting age. Because they're, I would say, their guest speakers, as we would have any guest come in, that's, an advisor or someone professional or whatever, talking about what it is that they do. That's, I don't, whatever people think.
Is this the agenda discussion about the annual meeting? Or
Yes.
is
I
that
think
where
so.
you are now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Tom.
So I would say that the Drew, the school board in particular, and you did an excellent job at this meeting. It was one of the best I've seen in a long time. I think the meeting itself, the school board portion of the meeting was 3 hours. The meeting took 4 hours because there was one individual who basically threw out different things that took an hour. But the school board accomplished its business very efficiently, very effectively. I couldn't have been happier.
Mhm. I really think having the facilities committee do all the work that it had done over time, I think really did help. There was, so much time and effort put into, evaluating the proposals that were put forward, and I think that really helped the community feel comfortable with them and things like that. So I thought,
That worked, and then that professional video, wow.
oh, I thought that was fantastic. I thought adding that was a great
I think our
way
new
of just-
superintendent had a lot to do with it. I mean, there were a lot of people who had their fingers in it.
Yeah,
but-
I thought that was a great idea as well.
That was actually something that EEI has found to be very effective, and they suggested it, they produced it for us. They brought the people in to film it and the whole thing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, you couldn't question them because it was a film. You couldn't argue with them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There was some discussion, I didn't know.
I know,
from the
this is
meeting
kind of,
whether you want to have it now or part of the report.
we can do it now since we're
Okay.
just talking about the meeting.
Okay, one of the comments that was made at the review was the amount of time from the start of the meeting to the first article coming to the floor. And I don't know, I'm not sure how it's done in Hollis, but in Brookline, the rules are dealt with very minimally. Just a couple of procedural rules are brought up, and the rest people are referred to in their annual reports to read them. This year was viewed to be a little bit of an anomaly because of the specific changes we had made to 3 of the rules, but that is a long process. The other thing that was brought up was questioning whether having the complete summary review of all articles at the beginning is the most effective way, because especially for people who are new, they don't know how that connects to the articles later on when the articles come back. So the question was, would it be better to maybe have one or two overview slides, just to, you know, like the prepping the jury, but have the actual discussions take place at the preamble for each article. And that's just something to think about. It would accomplish potentially two things. One is it would get us to the first article sooner, and the other is that it might have things fresher in their mind when the discussions, and they would see that connection. It was just a a thought to consider. And then going the other way, time-wise, a couple of the board members felt bad, and this sort of goes to the same thing that Tony was talking about, that we don't get to do an introduction of the schools, of what's going on in the schools. That's in the past been viewed as our opportunity to brag. And we haven't done that in the last several years because the agendas have been so packed. There's been a fear that we're gonna lose people. So we've got competing priorities, but those were factors that came out in the discussion. Overall, the impression was that it went well. There was unanimous agreement that the changes that were made were net positive, and that the film or the video was instrumental in helping people understand the context in a way that is very hard to do in a back and forth manner. So maybe we should learn from that.
Great.
I'd love to get a few minutes of the overview, but if we could put that in place and take away a little bit of the rule explanation and come out even, I'd be real excited about that.
Drew was amenable to it. He really is trying to be responsive to the requests, and he has competing demands on him, but I think that he saw the benefit of the compression, and he's receptive to it as well. Big thing that came up is he did say he's not going to run again for it. So if anyone has thoughts on someone who would be willing and interested to be a moderator, he suggests they be encouraged greatly. In Brookline, we have someone who's been shadowing Peter, and I'm sure, I'm not sure, but I suspect Drew would be amenable to that if there was someone who was interested but concerned about it.
Great, thanks. I appreciate the overview. I think it was a good cycle. I think we worked through questions, issues, comments, and understanding of things, assumptions throughout, and we really do have it down to a nice flow of how things get accomplished. So I'm grateful for that. Looking forward to, I don't even want to say it, FY27 planning.
No.
I'm just thinking, so we will not have, we'll get to collective bargaining in a minute, Tom, we will not have a teacher's contract. We'll only have HESA next year, correct? Because that's an.
No, we did HESA.
Did we
Well,
standardize it?
We'll have it as a warrant.
Oh,
document.
Yeah, we'll have it as a
Yes, it
warrant.
won't be a
It's
negotiation,
It isn't
but
a
yeah.
it's not going to be
Yes, yes, sorry.
negotiated, but it will be a separate article.
Yes, sorry.
So we will not have the professional staff contract.
No.
And we will just kind of see what other things develop as we get closer to planning from an assumption standpoint. We'll know the NHRS rates since they're locked in 2-year cycles, and we'll wait on the outcome of legislation to see what changes there might be to adequacy and funding models for special education aid and things like that. Potentially even I think there's still 1 or 2 legislative bills out there that would adjust some of the New Hampshire retirement system elements, but, you know, who knows how all those things will work themselves out. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you since you had indicated you wanted to talk a little bit about collective bargaining. And so it gets into kind of the dovetails onto the next item, which is if there's any specific topic or topics you think as a budget committee we should just be considering or addressing as we, you know, lead into this next cycle. So Tom.
So, going back to a long time when I was on the school board, I always thought the negotiation process was deficient, that there must be a better way, but I didn't know what the better way was. And I'm really disappointed that the budget committee, which I now sit on, isn't able to really get involved. And through those two contracts, the professional contract and the support staff contract, passes probably 80% of the school dollars or more that we spend, and we don't spend any time on it and have very little say on it. Not because anything the school board's done, but it's just the way the process works.
It's also the way the law is.
So, so I complained, I'm gonna offer a solution. There's two contracts that usually have a 3-year duration. So that means this year that we are now in, there's no negotiation. So what I would...
Excuse me, is that, I thought, didn't we add a year onto the professional, onto the,
No, I think it's 3.
is this the first year
I think this
of a
was
new
the
contract for the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought next year was gonna be the
No,
first year.
no.
Sorry, Tom.
So, what I'm thinking, so that the budget committee could get involved a little bit is, in all those dollars, there's only 2 paragraphs in the whole contract where most of the money is spent. The salary paragraph and the health insurance, dental insurance paragraph. That's it, in 36 pages of contract. If we talked about just those 2 paragraphs, and I'm talking about where salaries should go and shouldn't go. I'm talking about strategically. This would be the year for us to do it. If we were to do it, maybe with the school board or without the school board, however it happened, I think it'd be better with the school board, maybe in a committee. I'm not sure how to do it, but I really think it would be beneficial for this board, I know I'd like to do it, to talk about what goals could look like next year when you negotiate the teacher contract in the area of salary and benefits. And it'd only be offering an opinion, because then you go and negotiate the contract, but it would be a way for our voice to get into the process. So,
And that actually has been done
In past.
in previous years.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, one of my greatest experiences as a member of the COOP Budget Committee, one year, Darlene and I reviewed the contract that was the existing contract. And based on that, we came out with a sense of the committee, and we provided as an input in terms of the things that we thought were suggestions on the contract. We couldn't get
well,
involved.
good. I
but
didn't
we've
know-
done that
I-
before.
But I will say, we've and we did attempt that more recently, but there couldn't really get to consensus on, you know, suggested metrics and things like that. But I think it is a great idea to pull out the step tables, have everybody look at them, understand how they work. There's good information on the PELRB website, on the DOE website about comparable districts, where we stand, you know, number of steps, number of columns, things like that, so people can become familiar with, you know, where we stand within our own SAU with comparable districts. It also gets to a discussion I've been interested in having, as I put up a chart every year of comparable districts, but we haven't really talked about whether those are truly comparable districts or not. There are different reasons why those districts are identified. Maybe we need to go back and, you know, reevaluate if those are really comparable and, you know, parts of the state we should be comparing ourselves to. But I think it's a good time to do, take Tom's recommendation and really start looking at things and deciding, kind of what are the important things we think, are good for, determining metrics and percentages, and looking at, I think where we did previous work was saying, where does the budget align to, the contract as a percent of the budget, but we really never, delved into, what are the real things we should be comparing, looking at the overall value and level of the contract.
And as I recall, it isn't just
So-
about the quantities, the numbers, it's about potential trade-offs in terms of benefits, because sometimes you're providing additional benefits that are not necessarily related to the specific salary, it could be related to other benefits, to other incentives, so.
Exactly.
But
This is the package of money, how are we spending it? Is benefits this much and salary this much, and we can't attract new people to the profession because we don't open it.
So all those factors are relevant.
There's a conversation there that doesn't occur when you're in the middle of negotiating.
Right.
I guarantee it, at least it never occurred when I was involved in this for many, many years. And we have the year now where we could, it's not as though we'd have to spend 150 hours on this. I think we could spend a modicum of time and maybe there'd be a consensus, maybe there wouldn't, but at least as a budget committee, again, 80% of the money, and we don't have much of a conversation. We're handed a contract at the end, and we all freak out, and it doesn't. Well,
Yeah, you're
it
right.
doesn't work well, and you know that because 2 years ago you were caught in the middle of exactly what I think I'm talking
Right.
about.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I don't think that it should involve the school board. I don't think it can involve the school board, because I think if the school board were involved, there would be risk of it being looked at as outside of the appropriate negotiating process on one hand, and on the other hand, it would also potentially put the school board at a disadvantage by not having maintained the normal confidentiality of both strategy and position. So I think it's a worthwhile conversation to take place in this forum, but I don't think you want to try to do it jointly with the school board.
I don't think, when we got involved in that particular example that I recall, we don't do it jointly with the school board, we basically did it ahead of time.
Right. No, Tom
And we
just
basically-
asked the question of whether we should do it with the school board.
So, when we did it last time, refresh my memory, did we do that as a public document or as a non-public document?
It was a public document.
It was a
Yeah.
public
Yeah,
document.
there wasn't like a lot of significant analysis to it. It was
Yeah.
overall trends of
Yeah.
how previous contracts went, and more of a philosophy of I could dig it out and share it with everybody, but it was more of the philosophy of considering that increasing costs of healthcare, so to put some attention toward how the district would adjust and look at percentages. Didn't put percentages forward or things like that, but just kind of put those those overarching things in place, like we should be considering things like this, and
Yep.
there were just maybe 2 or 3 points.
And it had to
for
do
each
with
contract.
giving extra stipends for certain activities, above and beyond your
Oh,
your-
that one. Well, that was
your normal
that
salary,
time
right?
was that was a long time ago. That one addressed attaching a merit pool to the contract. That was implemented and then negotiated out. That's how long ago
Right.
that one was. Because after it was put in place, I think the management of it and I'm not sure, I don't
Did
wanna,
not
I
have
don't
the
wanna say.
desire- It did not have the desired results,
Right.
Thank
and
you.
the school board proactively, proposed its removal with support from the staff.
Right, right, so that was, but it's, I think it's a good time to have the conversation again and just start, pulling things together. I don't know that it necessarily is a one meeting discussion, but it could be a part of, a few meetings where we maybe, address certain things, healthcare
You've got 2 months in the summer if you wanted to have a workshop or something
Yep,
on it too.
yep, that's another idea, we could consider that. Okay, it seems like there's enough interest, so we can kind of put some
Okay.
parameters in place and.
Well, went a little more than the 2 minutes
That's
I
okay.
said it would, but
Okay.
That's okay.
anyway, I appreciate the conversation.
Just thinking on that same note, at the annual meeting, some people, as I recall, got up and pushed on this idea of merit. How can we, industry, the only way you can get a raise is by merit and so on. But I was thinking about the steps that are in place and what you have to do to achieve the next step is in fact kind of merit-based. You don't just get there automatically. You have to acquire something, more knowledge, certifications and things like that.
Not for steps,
Yeah.
that's for lane changes.
Okay, all right, then I'm using the wrong terminology, but the
Steps
idea-
are just purely based on longevity.
longevity. But then the lane change then
That's
requires,
based on credentials.
which is in fact merit. You have to achieve that credential, study, do something.
Merit usually is directed towards assessed performance in the job, whereas the credentials come externally by completing education.
I was trying to see
No,
how
I
that fits in.
understand. It's a bigger conversation. It was a very informative process for me to be involved in both the implementation and the retraction. And I'm more than happy to share, I just don't want to bog this down.
Sounds like going to the dentist. Tooth pulled.
I like going to the dentist.
There will probably be some additional attention on health insurance pending legislation at the state level that address risk pools and
The potential dissolution of
the potential dissolution of one of the leading carriers for many
Two of 'em.
districts in the state pending the result of said legislation.
2 of them.
Both of them?
Interlocal trust has already
Oh,
said.
yes, you're right, 2 of them. So, the current legislation that's being proposed would change the level of, risk pools that the insurers need to carry and put some onus on the districts for, contributions that they potentially would need to make, and, without delving into many details, the calculation and that's being put forward in the legislation is not the calculation used by Health Trust, which is one of the leading insurers across the state. So it puts their continued place in the market at risk, and they've noted, provided information that they would be out of the market by next July if the legislation passes as written. School Cares is another carrier, and the model that's being recommended is more favorable to one that they use to determine their thresholds, and it doesn't affect them to the degree that it does Health Trust. I could share some information that's available because I can tell by
So
the
the
look
end
on
result
Tom
is-
Enright's face how puzzled he is by my comments.
Well, I used to be heavily involved
I
in
know
Health
that.
Trust
I
and,
do know that. So I will pull together some of the letters and information that's available, and we'll see how all of that works. There are many conversations ongoing, and I don't know what
Is
way
there a
the
deadline
legislation.
for when that bill has to be voted on?
I think I don't know. I could try to find out, but I don't know.
I was just curious if you knew.
So that one, expanding the funding of, trust funds, the EFAs and school choice are still those are three big, bills that are still out there to be voted on, so. I would like help with tracking legislation. I feel like I have valiant effort every year, and I start off like, we can do this, but when there are 1,000 bills out there, it's really
a
hard
lot.
to kind of keep track, and it does boil down to maybe, 3, 4, or 5 main ones that I'm looking at, from a financial perspective. There are others that affect curriculum and how things get done in the schools themselves, in addition to all of the other pieces that are out there, just with, running the rest of the state.
Can we use AI to maybe filter the database and
I'm-
extract
I'm-
the 3 or 4 key
You know,
items?
we get links and
Like
but it just,
ChatGPT,
it's,
right?
it's like a tidal wave of just information and public hearings and things like that, so maybe we'll just work
Well,
on.
does the school board association
Yep,
filter it?
Yep, they send it out, but
But
it's.
I mean, do they help by saying, this is really important, that one not so important?
Yes, but even in the documentation that says this is important, that's not important, even if as you're reading, I'm like, no, that one's actually pretty important and we should be paying attention to that. So, I think I will get better at forwarding on information, and, it's, something to just kind of think
It
about how we
changes-
kind of.
Changes day to day is part of the problem.
Right.
We get updates sometimes multiple times a day about it.
Yeah, and then, the
Well-
school board association comes out with the list, like, these are being heard on this day. I'm like, okay, we can provide online input, great. And you go in to do online input, like, but it's not listed for that day. Okay, so because it's changed and it's evolved, I'm like, all right, well, how do you find when it is listed? Things like that. So it is just, and just the sheer volume of bills that get put forward. So,
At
And
least
part-
we know that our representation is very active in Concord.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's the problem. But
Yeah.
the part of the problem, though, is having spent a lot of time watching legislation in past years, is a bill. You'll be watching a bill, it'll get defeated, and you think, oh, it's gone. But then it just gets amended, usually to the budget, which is like this enormous
Right,
thing.
which is what-
And at the last minute, they can throw it back into the budget, and all of a sudden, it's now
Right,
law
which is
when
what-
you thought it was defeated.
right,
That's
which is what
really hard
happened
to
with
track.
that tax cap one.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, it bypassed all of the processes that we're
Yes.
watching, like, oh, there'll be a public hearing, oh, great,
No,
we can
they're
put
not
our, blah, blah,
necessarily.
blah, and then no, all of a sudden, it's the emergency, this got added on, and there's no way you can provide any input to it, it's just got
Yes.
added on.
Yep.
So, there are those things too, and, but, I guess we'll just kind of continue to try to do the best we can, and maybe the number of bills will get lower as we move
Can
forward.
I ask, how often do you update people on the bills and the changes?
When I get an update, I try to forward it on. I think I forwarded on 3 or 4 this second part of the year. I think for the fall session, I'm so focused on the budget that I don't, we just don't, I'm not able to really even be able to forward those types of things. So I'll be more diligent about, as soon as it hits my inbox, just forwarding it on for people to review. And there are websites where you can go in and you can search on, keywords and things like that, and information will come up, but it is just, there's a lot of information
wave,
there. Yeah.
You can go
So-
online and subscribe, you gotta find the right subcommittee that's
Yeah, so maybe we can-
responsible, and then you can follow that subcommittee, and it'll flag you every day what's going on.
Aren't you on all those
Maybe a
lists
good
already?
Eagle Scout project.
I get all these, yes. I'm not
Senior.
volunteering for anything yet.
Or senior civic project.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone has any?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Is Kelly gonna give us an update on actuals versus budget items to see if there's any?
That's the next thing on the agenda.
That's the next thing on the agenda, as
Okay.
soon as we finish this topic. Okay, well, if anything comes up, tonight's not the only night we can talk about things. So, but if anything, sparks an interest, or, feel like needs to devote some extra attention to, we'll certainly add that to the list. So Kelly,
Okay.
it's your turn.
So
Which one should I open, the report or
It's-
the
it's the
summary?
revenue expense report dated 4/1/25. And I will direct you to the second page at the bottom if you're following along. And that shows our projected fund balance as of this report on April 1st to be 443,000. That's the number that we would be giving back to the taxpayers if the year ended right now. The majority of dollars responsible for that would be in special ed. There's savings in out-of-district costs this time around, and hiring savings primarily.
Wow.
And that number is 386,000. We also can happily say that the work that was done at the high school with the boilers, changing the burners from oil to propane, is, this whole number isn't that savings, but there is, primarily this number represents the savings of that, which is 151,000. So we are benefiting from that project.
In what way? Because we spent less, or because it's costing us less for fuel, or
The-
why would,
Well,
how
probably,
did you save 150 on?
well, I haven't done a deep dive into it, but I would say it's kind of a combination of the two, that the cost of propane, I believe, was a little lower than the cost of oil this year for us. And, you know, I don't know if we're using less or not because it's propane versus oil. I'm not sure about that, but the act of putting the propane boilers is resulting in a savings for the district.
But do you know if, was the cost of the conversion substantially below the budgeted cost of actually the hardware and changing the tanks, or is this mostly operational money?
No, it's operational. I think we were pretty much right on
Does that answer
budget.
your question, Tom?
Thank you, it does, and.
Ah,
and-
I see where you're going.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't
No, I had the same
articulate it
question
as
you did. I had the same question.
well
you
as
did.
you would. But, that's really good news.
Yeah, it is good news.
So who's the
Definitely.
contractor that supplies the propane?
I'm sorry, say that one more
Who is the
time.
contractor that supplies the propane?
The
service?
propane is from Rhymes.
Rhines, okay.
Mhm.
I think there was another
I didn't think
aspect,
they
is
still
that
existed.
the old oil boilers were so inefficient, they were hard to keep running
Yes.
and so on. So just by going to gas and getting a better gas furnace, you get the efficiency there. I mean, these oil burners were in bad shape, so may have been 70% efficient, now we're up to probably 98% with the gas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Tom, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
I thought Rhymes got bought out by somebody. I didn't think they were
Oh,
still Rhymes.
I'm not aware of that, but
No,
AmeriGas maybe, I don't know.
more than
No?
a couple of years ago. Maybe that might have been somebody else.
well, that's the name on the
Okay.
bills that we get, so.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and so those are the big reasons why. Obviously, this number will most likely go up as we close encumbrances and actuals become not encumbrances. So obviously, I'll keep you guys posted as we go on.
And
Yeah.
so, and the retained fund balance, we're anticipating, it looks like anticipating it to be a little bit lower.
Yeah, I've got it set here at 340,000, but, you know, we'll see how that progresses through the next couple of months.
I will have some further input when I give you the board update.
Okay, well, you can proceed.
You'd rather have?
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think if no one has any other questions for Kelly,
Oh,
we
are we
can move
there
on.
yet?
Hmm?
Are we there yet?
Yeah, we
You
are.
are.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll, just to segue over, because there is the money left over, as more than was anticipated, and the passage of the two bonds, there is likely going to be a request / recommendation from the administration to do additional roof work on the middle school to allow greater installation of solar faster. Since the solar is viewed to be a net positive budget contributor. If we have the money now and we can get more of the roof done, then the first phase of solar installation could potentially be greater. And not just solar, but also the HVAC work. It's just compressing the project because that's viewed to have an overall positive impact on both conditions in the school and finances. So that, if that number holds where it is and or grows, there will likely be a recommendation to the board to retain money to do more of the roof than has been put in the budget to date.
Is there an estimated initial estimate of what it would cost to do that? What would be recommended?
No, it's more a question of how much money we have will buy how much more roof.
Because in my mind, there's always a challenge. I think we ought to always consider giving some money back to the district.
They're not talking about spending the whole thing. I mean, we target to, when we have numbers like this, like for instance, last year, the board put a stake in the ground. They wanted to give back a minimum of $200,000,
Right.
and we gave back more than that, I believe. It's not going to wipe it out, but to the degree that it's windfall money, the idea of investing it in accelerating the savings program, the efficiency programs, will be proposed. I don't know what the outcome will be, but by
So who's doing the calculations to demonstrate what the trade-off is, like in terms of investing $100,000 toward this project would benefit by saving so much 2 years from now?
My guess is it will come before Tom and you and I with the facilities committee
Okay.
meeting in May. I suspect that will likely be an early point, because one of the things we need to confirm is that there's actually the ability to compress the schedule of the other things. If it's put the roof on, but you can't do anything with it, then it's a different question.
Yeah,
If you
right.
put the roof on, we can get the stuff, we can get rebates, blah, blah, blah. All that has to be addressed, because there's
Okay.
a lot of moving pieces.
So Tom, you mentioned the May meeting, so the facilities committee is ongoing, you're gonna continue meeting and
Yes, the facilities committee has been, when it was established as ongoing, and this was the first project of it.
Mhm.
I don't know if the membership is likely to change or expand. That's something that we're gonna have to find out
Yep.
from Lance. But I did get from Lance that he's planning on having the meeting at the default schedule is the first Wednesday of every month from 4 to 5 here.
When? What time?
4
4
to
o'clock
5.
here.
4 to 5 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay.
Another thing that you already talked about the uncertainty about healthcare. That was discussed. We do have a significant amount of staff changes going on at the co-op. Teacher resignations, retirements, new hires. I don't know. I haven't heard. I don't know if Kelly knows what the net changes, if any, will be to payroll yet. and
No,
any of that. So
it's
that'll be
early.
something we have to figure out. In addition, we've got administrator turnover going on in the co-op. So there's a lot of staffing dynamics going on that may have an impact, but we don't know what that is yet.
So there will be a new principal at the high school.
Yeah, I
in
was gonna
case
ask
everybody
you,
hadn't
what is the
heard.
status of the principal and the assistant superintendent?
The
I'm just-
principal has been hired.
Oh.
The new principal has been hired. Let's see if I've got his name written down.
Jake Hess.
Hmm?
Jacob Hess. think he comes from Campbell.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, and, do you know if the other situation is public yet? The other administrative position at the high school?
Well, the assistant
Um,
superintendent was,
No, not that.
I
Was
don't
this-
know if it's public.
Okay.
but the assistant superintendent, so the principal is from Campbell High School
Yeah.
in Litchfield. And
The
the
assistant
assistant
that-
superintendent
that's-
is from
That's Dot.
Beverly, Mass. I don't know her name though.
Dorothy Flaherty.
What was it?
Dorothy Flaherty.
And,
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume,
Yeah.
that we have people.
It's great. It's great that we have
Start.
people.
and,
Someday we'll have robots, maybe.
the, we did have some, we're in good shape primarily in staffing at the co-op at this point. We don't know if things are gonna change during the summer, but at this point, things are pretty well established. Hiring goes well, and I think that's pretty much, reviewed the data. Oh, there were the comments made at the meeting, the annual meeting about the statistics and things, and there was a fairly lengthy discussion about that. It's not really a financial one, but I know there are interested parties here, and one of the thrusts of it was the fact that because the test that is used to the testing that is used to generate a lot of the data that's reported at the state level is opt-out testing, and it occurs during the same time as high-stakes testing for students such as PSATs, SATs, and AP tests, that a significant portion of our students who would likely perform very well choose not to take the test because it has no impact on them, no positive impact, and they do take it, they don't necessarily work at preparing for it because they're deeply engaged in other activities. We feel that that's a pretty significant disadvantage to our performance on those tests, in particular the fact that it's opt-out. The participation rate, I don't have the data in front of me, but it was much lower than I expected it was going to be, and there were parents on the board and around who said their kids don't take it because of the timing of it, and it's just not something that they value, which brought up the question of what should be the items that we as a school district use to judge our performance, to benchmark things. And that's a moving target, and I did not hear an answer that was understandable, concise. There's a feeling that the SATs are a good benchmark of that. The reason being that we have all juniors take it, and it's viewed as one of the high stakes tests, so that there's a feeling. But that doesn't capture a lot of the subject matter that gets brought into the state testing. So it's not an apples to apples thing. They try to look at actual results, such as are students able to do what they want to do upon graduation, whether that be going to a school of their choice, getting involved in an occupation of their choice, things of those natures. But a lot of these are not easy to quantify. So it's an ongoing battle.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Having grandkids in high school and opting out of testing. But how does that affect the percentage of kids that are performing at grade level or below grade level in math, English, and so on. If
The
they're
way
not
that, the
taking
way
the
that it
test.
does is that the opting out is disproportionately students who are in our highest level activities,
Agreed.
such as AP tests, such as who are cramming for SATs and things of that nature. And the other part of it is that the students who do take it know it doesn't matter. The tests, from what I understand, you can you may get penalized based on wrong answers or not answering. Here's the real big deal, though, that I'm remembering it now. You have to have a certain amount of participation. It's required by the state. So I don't remember what the number is, but let's say that participation is 95%. And if you don't get 95%, the number of that you're short by are registered as zeros
Oh, jeez.
in the calculation. They calculate.
That's a good system.
They calculate
That
based
sounds
on
right.
if you had achieved it, and the gap is scored at 0 per student.
That's skewed.
I think there needs to be a better clarification on how that's done, so that at least that information can be taken in context.
It's definitely worth reading the minutes, and I would actually like to go back and watch the presentation on it, because I read that in the minutes, and I'm like, I'm gonna read that again, because I think I read that wrong.
So,
But
just
yeah,
for an
it's-
example, let's say our 90, let's say our threshold was that we had to have 67 students take the test out of 70. If we have 68 or 67, all the scores count and we get a valid result. If we have 55 students take it, then the gap between 55 and 67, those are all scored at 0. And we have relatively small classes. I mean, by classes I mean the total number of students in the school. So 5 or 6 students opting out
that is impactful.
dramatically hurts us the way they score it. They don't prorate it based on how many take it. They assume that 97, whatever percentages, the minimum took it.
What they
unless it's
should do
more.
is take the average of the others that took it and then add
Yeah,
it.
of course they should.
Her.
Yeah.
Of course they should.
I mean,
The oth-
there's all kinds of easy ways to do it rather
It's
than
it's
zero.
completely absurd.
And the other interesting one fact was on the science test that there are different general topics, and you could your best chemistry students could end up with the biology one or the earth science one, and so it isn't a test
yeah, they don't all
that's
get the same
that has
subject
like
matter.
that consistently addresses every topic. The test, there are at least
They're
at least
subject
three,
specific,
right?
so they have the 3 subject areas that are given, but you don't get to pick, and they're essentially random who gets which test. And if you've got a student that's a chemistry physics person that hasn't taken biology and they get a biology test, or conversely, got someone who wants to go pre-med, so they take chemistry and biology and they get a physics test and they've never taken a physics class.
The other thing, factor, and because I listen to it, like I say, for my grandkids, right about now they're going around visiting colleges. So that means they have to take a day out from their classwork, plus all the other things that you mentioned, AP classes and taking the SATs and whatever testing, and they opt out of the state tests. There's only so much they can do.
So
You have to be
I
brilliant to
guess
survive.
the message is our school leadership at all levels doesn't put a lot of value in those test results. Doesn't mean that they don't want to assess it, but that's not considered a valuable tool for us. When you have a school with maybe 1,000 per class, or my graduating class in Nashua back then was 800 students, and you get 15 people who opt out, or you get 20 people who opt out, it doesn't have the same impact as when you've got 80 in a class. Or 100.
I did some looking to try to
Move on.
justify what was going on, because I really believe wholeheartedly that the students out of Hollis Brookline High School are exceptionally good, all of them. They all can do well, and it's attitude and aptitude. You have some that have high aptitudes and lousy attitudes, and vice versa. It makes a difference. If you looked across the country, New Hampshire, of all the states, is number 6. Then you look at Hollis Brookline High School in the state, and it's always in the top 10, 6, 5, whatever. In Hollis Brookline, looking at all of the high schools in the country, like 25,000, they're around 1,600 and something. That's excellent. And the people in the town don't know it, and they should appreciate it. They should thank the students, the parents, the teachers, family, whatever.
Tony, you're 100% right, but you gotta remember, the goal
Yep.
of the people who are promoting this is to undermine confidence in public education.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like.
I,
Totally.
I think the conversation's been really interesting, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily related to budgets and financials. This seems more like a school board discussion than a budget committee
Well,
discussion.
No, but
Except the one-
I actually appreciate the information just
Yep.
because it did come up at annual meeting, and it's
Yep.
just good information to
It-
understand how the testing works and things like that.
It's good
So,
to know. It just
yeah.
feels like it's outside of our
Yeah.
Except
purview.
Yeah.
what they bring up is we're spending too much money on our school budget, and we're not getting the results. The kids are not doing well in, math and sciences and all that, because they're not looking at the data correctly. And they're using that to complain about the cost. And it's not everyone. I'm telling you, most of the people in the town do not mind paying what they're paying, because the quality of education is excellent.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, great. That actually concludes our agenda for this evening. In case anyone has anything they would like to, any other topics they'd like to bring up at this point? No?
I was just looking at the time.
Yep.
There's a couple of things that are SAU related, not specifically COP related, but I think this group might want to know.
Okay.
One is that Lauren DeGennaro received her CAG certification. She
Oh,
completed it,
great.
Received it. So there will be a SAU governing board meeting coming up. It's my suspicion that we will again look at the possibility of having the Director of Student Services become an assistant superintendent. It has financial implications. The different roles have different NHRS contribution rates. It also allows the person to participate at certain levels of meetings that are not allowed if they are not at the superintendent level. But you'll hear pushback that we're spending more on people by having extra superintendent, assistant superintendents. If anything, it is a financial savings. It is not a cost adder to change the title. The other thing that we
How do you make that last statement? Because I thought you just said there were financial.
yeah, it's savings.
Oh,
It's a lower contribution rate to NHRS.
I thought it would be a higher one.
No,
Tom, what is CAG?
it is their certification level that allows you to be a superintendent. I don't know what it stands
It's
for.
a Certificate of Advanced Graduate
There we go.
Studies.
That's good.
Thank you.
And I
Is
think
that gonna
that's
be
the- I
discussed
think that's the
and
main-
properly documented so that
Yeah,
people
the-
can see what the trade-off is, or?
The governing board meeting is,
Yeah.
when is that meeting?
15th.
Oh, May 15th. Great. Okay, any other topics, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, okay, I will look at our calendar. Our regularly scheduled meeting for May will be on Thursday, the 22nd. We'll have the food service overview that evening, in addition to the other, financial updates and school board updates. And at this point, I'll look for input from our process if we're with.
I enjoyed the conversation. I thought it was, we discussed some interesting topics. We are within the time, you know, schedule for the meeting. I welcome and I enjoy the presence of Melanie and Tony. And every time I listen to Tom, I always learn something. So I enjoy that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Great, so
So,
at
I think
7:50,
we had a good meeting.
thank you. At 7:56, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Raul, seconded by Brian. All
Yep.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, unanimous, 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.